Out is a new horror film based off a 3-minute short made by David F. Sandberg, and the movie is directed by David F. Sandberg, and it follows this dysfunctional family. The mom, played by Maria Bello, has basically lost her mind and is really freaking out her son named Martin because she's talking to something in the dark. The only thing is, that thing she's talking to is actually real, and whenever the lights go out, it actually appears, but when the lights go on, it disappears. But the mom really likes talking to this thing, so the majority of the time the lights are out, and it's really freaking out the boy. So the daughter, Rebecca, played by Teresa Palmer, who's been separated from the family for a while because of similar issues, decides to re-enter their lives and try to help out Martin. And at the same time trying to solve the mystery of this Diana figure that shows up in the darkness. Now, I was more excited for this movie than I usually am for horror films, not just because it's produced by James Wan, and not just because that trailer actually looked really creepy, but also because it is based off that 3-minute short, which was really well done, and that director was going to be making this one, so I automatically got really excited to see it. Even though I was a little skeptical going in, because it's a very simple presence. You flip a light switch, and if the lights are off, you're dead, but if they're on, you're okay. I didn't know how they're going to stretch that into an hour and 20-minute movie, even though that is short as far as movie times go. I was a little worried about how they were going to be able to keep my interest with flicking light switches. But I was actually on the edge the entire time. I was very unsettled throughout the entirety of this movie because Lights Out is a really good horror film. And a lot of that is due to the direction by David F. Sandberg. He did a very good job directing this movie, especially for a directorial debut like this. He did a very good job here. And it's not just the scares that I was really impressed by, and I will get to that in a minute, but it's also the family drama that's going on too. If you remember in my review for The Darkness, I mentioned if they got a better director and maybe better screenwriters and fixed up the script, that movie actually could have turned out to be a really cool horror drama. And Lights Out is a really good horror/drama film. Because even though there is a dark figure in the shadows waiting to kill you possibly, there's also a drama going on of Child Protective Services thinking that Maria Bello maybe isn't a suitable parent, and then Rebecca might have to fix up her life in order to take care of Martin because maybe Maria Bello isn't that stable. That was actually a really interesting plot point that had me hooked on the movie. And what I really like about this horror film is that they actually flesh out its characters. They actually add something to them instead of just writing in a character just so they can get killed later. They actually took time to add in some character for everyone to make you care for them, so when this thing attacks them, you actually get scared for them. And I gotta tell you, Maria Bello really impressed me in this movie. Her performance gave you the sense that she was not right up in the head. She was really freaky, but at the same time you couldn't help but feel slightly bad for her as well, like, oh dang, that sucks, man. And also Teresa Palmer, I've liked her in other movies before, like Warm Bodies and The Sorcerer's Apprentice, even though that's more of a guilty pleasure for me. I still liked her in those movies, and here I thought she was really good as well. And also the young kid, Martin, I thought the actor who played him did a really good job in this movie. He actually sold me on his character. He convinced me that he was actually a really terrified child, and not in a cheesy, over-the-top way like most child actors are in horror films. This is actually one of those rare occasions where a child actor is actually good and convincing. I guess 2016 is the year of good child performances. Neil Seddy in The Jungle Book, Ruby Barnhill in the BFG, and now this kid in Lights Out. And one character that really surprised me, the boyfriend to Teresa Palmer's character, Alexander Persian, not only did a really good job playing the character, but the character did not feel like a throwaway boyfriend or girlfriend character, because sometimes horror movies will do that. They'll add in a love interest just so that person can get killed later and get in some sort of trouble later on. But no, they actually gave him a likable personality, and the actor did a good job playing him, and he actually gave me one of the biggest reactions of the movie. I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, but the way he handled a certain situation he was in, I loved it. And that's another thing I really enjoyed about this movie, is that these characters aren't dumb. Whenever they are in peril, they will try to find out what's the best way to get out of this situation. It's not just them sitting around waiting for a jump scare to happen and then, oh, look, you just died. No, they actually thought of ways to get out of their situation. Like in the first trailer, you saw that Rebecca lives in a place where there's a big tattoo sign outside, and then you see Diana at her doorway, and that tattoo sign flashes in, she disappears, but then she cuts back. Rebecca knows that that tattoo sign is not going to stay up there for long, so she immediately hauls butt towards the light switch when Diana is gone. That was really smart. And also in that first trailer, there's a guy working at the warehouse, and he notices Diana getting closer to him, and he's like, Okay, and he immediately runs to a room with some big light. Like, good! You're making smart decisions. And then you have the boyfriend. I'm not gonna spoil that one though, because that was really clever. And it just made me like these characters even more because there's actual drama going on with them, they're portrayed well, and they're likable, and they're not stupid. That's good. And I gotta be honest, Diana really freaked me out in some scenes, and I'm not ashamed to admit this. Last night, after I saw the movie, when I was going to bed, I might have left the lights on. I'm not ashamed. That's how much the horror aspect of this movie actually got under my skin. Having to sleep with the lights on. I wouldn't be surprised if other people did it too. Even though I also wouldn't be surprised if it was just me, because I'm a wuss. But if I did have to have some problems with this movie, it's that some parts about Diana weren't that explained well for me. Two things, one of them being the timing of what she did prior to the movie and something she did at the beginning. Like, you get a sense of why she did it, but I just didn't understand her timing on it. Like, if she really wanted to do it that badly, then why did she wait? And also, they reveal in her backstory that she was able to do something. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil what, but the way they tried to explain it just made it seem like it was just a normal thing that happens in just rare people. And it honestly made me question it, like, how are you able to do that exactly? And if it was just one thing that happened, I'd be like, whatever, but it's a certain plot point that plays out later in the movie. And another thing about this movie is the ending. Now, I'm not hating on what they tried to do, because I actually like that they tried to do that. It's just, it didn't really satisfy me all that much. I don't really think they built up to it that properly. I think if they spent a little bit more time in that finale, maybe stretched out the movie's length a little bit more, maybe the ending would have felt a little bit more satisfying for me. But overall, Lights Out, it's not a masterpiece. It's not one of the best horror films of all time. And if you walked up to me and asked, hey, which one do you prefer, The Conjuring 2 or Lights Out? I would obviously go for The Conjuring 2, because Lights Out doesn't even really compare to The Conjuring 2. But Lights Out is still a really good horror film with some really good characters, and it actually has a really good, interesting, dramatic element. I'm gonna give Lights Out a very strong B+. I had a lot of fun with this horror film. I was very surprised by how much fun I had, because it's a PG-13 summer horror film, but it actually turned out really good, and I'm so glad that the director, David F. Sandberg, is now doing Annabelle 2, because that actually gives me faith that they can actually make a good sequel out of that really crappy Annabelle movie. But if you saw Lights Out, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it. And if you haven't left a question for the Q&A that I'll put up at some point, leave your questions in the comments below, and I'm going to try doing a Bourne series, the Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, and Bourne Ultimatum, before Jason Bourne comes out next week. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.